16, and all that time I've known about you but never gotten around to visit you. Your luck just ran out. What I'm going to say about that. And I hope my dad's not turned over in his grave today, because this is the home of West Virginia University, the sworn nemesis of Virginia Tech, which is our part of the world down there, which was his favorite team. So I'm sure he'll forgive me, grudgingly. I wasn't grudgingly, but gratefully looking at your website to see the kinds of things you all are involved in and care about as a congregation. It was very enlivening. Thank you for who you are and what you do. I wish I had more time to hang around to find out more about it, but I'll do as much as I can today. You seem like a small but mighty group in your attitudes, your affinities, your actions. We try to do some of that ourselves at New Community Project. We call ourselves a small nonprofit organization with a big goal to change the world. I'm sure that's in your job description somewhere too. Somebody's got to think big. Y'all are. We're trying to. Because we need big changes in our world, and I think you know that as well as anybody. The three things we focus on, you all got to pick your battles, you know. The three things we focus on are the viability of God's creation, which we are fast undoing, dignity and opportunity for God's children around the world, and how about ourselves? How do we change our approach? How do we change the way we see ourselves in relationship to God's creation as Christian people trying to follow this man Jesus? Now regarding the first one, the environmental part, every system is under stress. As you probably know better than me. Some of you are university people here at the University of West Virginia. West Virginia University, you'll do it the other way, don't you? Every system's under stress. We're losing Alaska. It's melting and burning. They lost 1 million acres to forest fires in July alone this past year. Last October, they told me when we were up there in this past summer, they told us last October there was not a day that it got below freezing in Denali National Park. Which also leads to a freeze-thaw cycle through the year, so that you don't find that just the powdery snow laying on the ground. Because it's freezing and thawing, you get a crust on top, which then affects the caribou. They have a prehensile antler. If you've ever seen a nice picture, I've got a nice picture. I'm not showing you during Sunday school because you're going to the Amazon instead of Alaska. But anyway, I've got a really nice picture of that prehensile antler. And they use that to go down through the snow to get to the lichen, which is the ground cover food that they eat. Well, now there's a crust on the snow. They probably need a pickaxe rather than a prehensile antler to get down through. We know not what we do. We think we'll escape the effects, but you know we're not going to, and we're not. Japan, they had that typhoon, what, last week? 3 foot of rain in one day. That'll mess something up for you. And then, of course, other places in the world, there's not enough rain, or it comes again in deluges, and then it makes it unmanageable to use for productive purposes. Do you think farther than human consequences? Winged insects, down by 80% around the world. We think we don't need winged insects. They are part of this network that we also are a part of. As much plastic as fish in the oceans by 2050, they're telling us. Perhaps more damage to the oceanic ecosystem than climate change, which is going to be huge. When I'm with a bunch of students, my capstone statistic is there are 60% fewer living creatures on the earth than when I was your age. I don't mean species extinction, but I mean the numbers in the oceans, in the air, in the swamps, on the land, wherever. They're not there anymore, and all of us, you know the reasons, and there's a list of about 6 important ones. And of course, people. You know, here in the United States, the money's coming in to some people in our country. In fact, the average household, per capita income in the United States is $60,000. Now, we all know that's not equally distributed. But $60,000 per person. Half the world lives on $6 a day. A huge disparity. Of course, many of them on much, much less than that. Well, we'll meet a couple of sweatshop workers during Sunday school. For the first time in Myanmar last May, I've been asking for many years if we could meet with some of the women working in the garment factories making our clothes for 20 to 40 cents an hour. We finally got to meet 2 last year, and I'll show you some pictures during Sunday school. Meanwhile, the CEOs of these clothing corporations sitting in corner offices in New York, $11,000 to $17,000 an hour. Of course, we get cheap clothes out of the deal. And we have the feel-good goodwill when we're finished with those clothes. You know, Well, what a system. You know, we don't even have to feel bad about going through so many clothes because we can stash them in Goodwill. Well, a bunch of that clothing gets shipped around the world to be sold on the cheap in poor world markets, running poor world tailors out of business. 30-some countries in the world don't take our used clothes anymore for that very reason. So even, you know, our good intentions go awry that have other kind of ripple effects in other places. Well, what a world. And what to do? I mean, that's sort of the question. Dare we take our cue from Jesus? Since this is church, let's talk about Jesus today. Dare we take our cue from Jesus? Not the Jesus of the radio preachers. Or even sometimes I consider the Jesus of the Apostle Paul. My sermon next week is going to be called, in Missouri, it's going to be called Saving Jesus.
Ooh, good luck.
And they got me doing a series. So the first week is Saving Jesus, and then the next one is Jesus Saves, okay? I'm going to get to that part too. But the first time I'm going to try to rescue Jesus from all the ways we make him to be something that I don't think the Gospels depict him to be. More of a get me to heaven kind of guy than a put me to work here on earth kind of guy, if you know what I'm saying on that. So that's next week. Come out and I'll be in Warrensburg, Missouri, if any of you want to be my groupies. Anyway, not that much to see between here and there. I'm not sure it's worth the trip. Anyways, so we're talking, you know, this other Jesus that I'm going to be talking about next week and some this week, of course, is this young radical. Now, radical, as you all scholars in here know, means getting to the root of things. So here's a guy that is getting to the root of things about our engagement with God's creation, our engagement with our spirituality, our engagement with our neighbor, calling us to do something differently and better for how we're dealing with these very earthly entities. Yes, he was concerned for our souls. But to him, if you read the Gospels, wealth and privilege, whether religious or social, seem to be the main threats to our salvation. I mean, tell that to the TV preacher with the house on the hill. Or to any of us who aren't paying attention to these young women making our clothes for a pittance. And our Lord challenged these systems, not by tossing starfish back one by one. I know that's a story we love. But Jesus had the courage to ask, why are these starfish out here in the first place? And what can we do to keep this from happening? Not to say, I could get into a long talk about charity and development and justice and all that stuff. Not that there's not occasionally needs for charity, of course there is. But also the bigger things that are causing, as the Archbishop from Recife, no, not with the city, from Argentina, the Archbishop from Argentina said many years ago, when I feed the hungry, they call me a saint. When I question why they are hungry, they call me a communist. So we challenge these systems at our risk, at our peril, really. And Jesus found that out for himself, of course. So even when he performed acts of mercy, healing, forgiving, accepting, he did it in such a way as to shine a light on implicit or explicit injustice, and misguided religious rules. Healing on the Sabbath, not allowed. Siding with a woman, not allowed. Welcoming the children, not allowed. Dealing with Zacchaeus, dining, that's the word I really want to use. Dining with Zacchaeus, not allowed. Because that guy was a tax collector, as we all know. Provoking contention from some and celebration from others. And what will bring us this opportunity to both antagonize and to energize? Well, letting our light shine. As he said in our passage today, and by the hour, he does mean our, the collective, the community. The original language, pardon my French, is y'all are the light of the world. In English, that word you can go both ways. Well, in the Aramaic, and I suppose in the Greek then that it was translated into, the you here is a collective you. So it's not like this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. It's this bright blaze of ours. We're going to put it on the tower. That's kind of what this means anyway. So, not that the individual actions aren't important, but you know, a campfire only burns as the lit sticks get together. If you know what I'm saying. You get a lit stick out by itself, it ain't going to be lit that much longer. And then with the campfire, you're going to have a bonfire. A beacon, we might even say. And that's what they used to use in the old days as sentinels, past messages from mountain to, at least they did in Lord of the Rings. That's all I know. Young Greta. She was a curiosity sitting outside the Swedish Parliament. And then a year later, millions are joining her around the world. So we need individual fire to be burned, but then it has to light the other fires, or it doesn't have the impact that it could and it should. And I got to think that people like those who are joining in places, movements like that, are looking for a place maybe to call home. And I'm wondering, how is the church the place that these people are going to gravitate toward? The kids in the streets, the adults on the border, wherever these people are dealing with these things, where's the place they're going to go call home? And how are we letting them know that we're the place that they can call home? This is part of the y'allness of this. That collectively, we have to be known for who we are and for what we care about. At New Community Project, we seem to attract young people on a mission, old people looking for a mission. we're not bashful, we're not boastful, but we're not bashful in putting ourselves out there. Our sustainable living centers, we have one in Virginia down in Harrisonburg, which is not that, well, I just drove by there yesterday, it's 3 hours from here. Anyway, Harrisonburg, Virginia, or Starksboro, Vermont, where they're putting these things into practice in a way that puts the light out there. Amelia was a JMU student, James Madison for the uninitiated. Amelia was a JMU student down in Harrisonburg who first came out to help at our sustainable living there on a sorority work day. She was so intrigued, she started coming back every week, and now she's full-timer with us. She tells us, I didn't know something like this existed. We have to put ourselves out there for people like these. And so did Missy. You're talking about people in your own community addicted and abused and that sort of stuff. Missy, addicted and abused, living behind a dumpster. That's where she was 8 years ago. She's found it, somehow connected up with us. We built her a tiny house on that site there. I'm saying we. I live in Roanoke. This is in Harrisonburg. We is our organization. Our people in Harrisonburg built her a tiny house. She said, I can't tell you how long it's been until I had a house of my own. And we made her the artist in residence. You know, we don't know what lurks beneath the surface of people that are struggling with something or another. I don't know if you have in your community those signs that say, no matter who you are, we're glad you're our neighbor.
There's one out in the yard.
She designed them. Missy designed those signs. Some Mennonite church, pardon my French, down in Harrisonburg came up with the concept of the sign, maybe the wording. They needed somebody to graphicize it, and Missy did it. And so did the city of Harrisonburg. Found the light shining in their face. We've been talking with them for 6 years now about a greenway. A paved path through town, from the poor part of town to downtown, so that people without cars can figure out how to get to the shopping area without having to have a car or taking their lives in their hands by walking on streets without sidewalks. 4 weeks ago, my partner Tom, up at our center there, gave the speech and cut the ribbon. We brought them around. Because, you know, we walked our talk, we got bicycle composting going on, bicycle vegetable delivery to the prisons and the schools. Trying to live the way we talk about living. And then we built relationship with the city council members. We got the community involved in Packard City Council meetings. We were trying to let the y'all light shine. And it worked. It can work. Yes, as we step out of bounds with some things that we care about and do, it can bring harassment or worse. If you're on a bicycle, as some of you know, you're a target. I don't really know why that is. I think there's a feeling of clash of the worldviews. I mean, I think that's part of it, but maybe there's other things too. Maybe you're just an easy target. And you know, we look for easy targets. But anyway, you can, get harassment or worse. A neighbor down in Harrisonburg, speaking of Harrisonburg, was living right next door to an immigrant family we were helping resettle as his neighbor. Well, he was belligerent. Names, threats, that kind of stuff. We won him over. We want him. Now he's helping out with chores in the backyard of that same family. So even those who are cursing what the dark can find compelling, the light compelling. And it can be liberating to those who are afraid to let their light shine, feeling isolated, insulated, not willing to share their conviction, maybe because they're not sure anybody else cares. I spend a week of my life every fall speaking in schools in California. Kind of the Laverne, Claremont, Ontario area. I don't know if you know where that is. Anyways, that's where I am. And one stop is the Richard B. Haynes Elementary School in Ontario, where I end up talking to about 7 or 8 classes all day long. And you got to be on your game with elementary kids. You know what I'm saying? Often without a mic. And by the end of the day, I'm whipped. Well, last fall I was there doing it. And I had a dinner invitation that night to a friend's house. And so I finished up my gig at the school. My throat was parched. I was with internet withdrawal. And I knew there was a McDonald's on Mountain Avenue between the school and my friend's house where I wasn't due for another 3 hours. So I stopped at the McDonald's. Go and get myself a Diet Dr. Pepper for 99 cents. And I will check my email. Well, of course, they're going to want to serve you this in a plastic cup. That doesn't really work for me. A worthless soft drink in a substantial plastic cup, the most of which go into the trash. Not even if it's recycled, almost everything is downcycled, just to remind you. They still have to make a new plastic cup. So I'm looking for one. I scavenge when I do this. So there was one presented itself at the top of the trash can. Handy. So I took it back into the restroom. By the way, they got hot water in McDonald's restrooms. I don't know what that's about. But I washed it out with soap and hot water. I'm ready to go. And so I walk up to the counter. I said, ma'am, I just want a 99-cent Dr. Pepper, and I brought my own cup. Sometimes in that situation, they'll give you a free one. I'm just telling you. Because they think you brought your cup back from the previous visit, which I didn't technically do. But it's a little too much to get into at the counter, you know what I'm saying? And I just receive it gratefully. Now in this case, I think she charged me 99, but I can drink 99 cents worth of Dr. Pepper. Okay, so I get my, now as this is happening, I'm noticing the maitre d' over there. The 50-something-year-old guy with the McDonald's cap and the bib and the black hair cascading out from under the cap, black glasses. And I can see, I just notice him, okay? And he'll take your food back to your table, he'll come clean up your mess, all this stuff. So I move over to the ice machine. Well, you know, it takes energy to make ice. So I get it out of the tray. It's my typical pattern. I can tell he's watching me. So as I finish my ice retrieval, he walks over. He says, sir, you know there's that lever there. If you push that lever, ice comes out. He must have sensed I was from Virginia where we don't have such things. But I got to tell him about what I was doing and why. And he said to me, you know, I care about the environment too. I try to do little things every day to take care of this earth. Then he gets a big grin on his face and says, I wonder if the president ever thinks about the environment. He just busts out laughing. But I felt like, by my weird action, I'd allowed this guy to come out of the closet. And say, he recognized that he had a colleague, he had a cohort, he had somebody else that was with him in this battle. And he could be public with it, without shame, or without feeling, you know, weird. Bashful Anabaptists, we got no time for that. I know, I'm not talking boastful, I didn't use that word. But I'm talking about people that getting their light out there in the way our light has got to be getting out there. Notice, yes, it will raise the ire of some. Yes, it invites people like Amelia to see and come and see things they haven't seen before. But it also can help some others come out of the closet and be who they really feel like they need to be. Because they've got permission now that they've got a friend. It's a ministry we have. So not only do we do it because it's the right thing to do, we do it because it's a ministry to the world around us for all those reasons I just mentioned. Jesus challenged the Sabbath laws and the notions about God. Yes, the authorities were in the rear, in the back of the room, plotting his destruction. Now for me, I might have changed my tune. If I know the people in the back are plotting my death for the things I am talking about. Not Jesus, not our Lord. But the words also electrified the people around him, the crowds, the masses. Finally, someone was articulating and activating the things that they held deep within themselves. But for fear kept them there within themselves. Until now. There was somebody else. We cannot hide this light under a bushel. A, it is who we are and what we are called to do. When we go to New Mexico, where Judith went with us last summer before, when Judith went with us the summer before, we meet with the Navajo leaders, the Dene. They call themselves Dene. I'm going to call them Dene. We met with Daniel So, a Dene elder. And they're doing the fracking out there. You Pennsylvanians know what fracking is. You should see what it's doing to the land and the water and the people and the atmosphere. Anyway, but everybody's on that side. Basically, the state government, they're earning lots of money from this. The feds are letting them do it. His own people are divided. Because a lot of them get big payouts. I said, Daniel, how do you keep hope alive? He said, well, we have the spirits of the ancestors around us, supporting us. And then he said, if we don't do it, who will? That's kind of that bottom line that I'm talking about. That's what we do. It's like Jesus in the parable of the sower. We're not responsible for whether things grow or not. That's beyond our control. Our job is to sow the seeds. Our job is to shine the light. That's our job. Secondly, It is who we must be, given the darkness that is closing in fast. Now, some writers disparage the fact that people like you and me, and groups like yours and ours, can make any difference in this world. They're sort of saying, you've got to get political, you've got to get mass movements going. And I want to say to these guys, Derek Jensen and Gernot Wagner, two of them, you can look them up there on our website, we have a reading list. I want to say to these guys, if we want to need a prairie fire, who's going to light the fire? Who's going to be the sparks that light the fire? Is this going to come from the top? I don't think so. That's why you need people like these that I know, who have this fire in their belly, and they're willing to put it out there for others to see, and to join together to put it out there for others to see. And that's where this other fire gets started that you keep saying we need. Otherwise, I don't see how this is going to happen. Courageous, committed, compassionate individuals banded together in communities of resistance and redemption. And see, the world is waiting for some glimpse of the light. They know something's deeply wrong with where we are headed, but find few who are suggesting that there is a life to be had apart from the me, more, now culture that is our way in our society. And that is misleading us toward alienation from God's earth and from God's people. If we build this fire, they will come. Last spring, I was speaking at Memorial Park Middle School in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's a regular stop during my week in Fort Wayne at this one middle school. It's a low-income school. Most of the kids are getting a free or reduced lunch. They face many challenges at home, these kids. Well, the science teachers are the ones who host me, and typically they ask me to do an environmental thing, which is what I usually do. But this time they asked me to talk about the situation of kids around the world. And so I was happy to share my slides and my stories, as I'll do with you after a while, of children, young people around the world and the many challenges they face, including lack of education. Well, after one of those sessions, unbeknownst to me, a group of kids from that class spent the next class period, which I think was a study hall, plotting to raise money for our Give a Girl a Chance program, which helps young women go to school around the world. Well, when that session was over, my session and their session, they came running back into the room, excited to tell me the news of what they had come up with. They had this dream that they were going to try to... And so what they wanted to do was have penny wars. I'd never heard of penny wars. But I think it means that 6th grade classes compete against each other to see who can collect the most pennies. And it's sort of a friendly competition for a good purpose. Well, after the battle was over, they got the principal's approval, the teachers were behind them, you know. After the battle was over, these kids with many challenges had stepped up to accept the challenge and raised over $700. Over 20 girls would go to school this year because of what these kids in a low-income school in Fort Wayne cared about kids half the world away. If we build it, they will come. Build the fire, light y'all's light. It's what we do. It's what will spark the larger fire that we need big and soon. And it's just what others need to come out of the closet or the classroom and light fires of their own. For the glory of God, for our neighbor's good, for the healing of all creation, and of we ourselves. Amen.